Welcome to Study Loop.
For this question, we are looking at how certain subspecies may arise from a population of organisms. So here, what they're proposing is we have a single population of organisms, but what happens is based on some sort of stress or stimulus, you're going to have two species arise out of it. So there are multiple pathways from which this can occur, and they give us the example of a geographic separation. So for example, if you have this original population and all of a sudden there is a flood and a river starts to form, you're basically breaking the population into two parts, and they're going to live in two different environments now. And they're not going to be able to interact with one another due to this physical separation by water. So based on the differences in their environment or the nutrients availability, they're going to start to develop different traits that allow them to survive better. And that gives rise to these two different species types. Yet they're still going to be fairly similar to one another, so we may call them subspecies of one another, because they are still closely related. So this could be differentiations between, say, wolves and, say, dogs, which both have the same genus and species. However, the dogs are separated as a subspecies. So here, other factors that could separate these two groups you can imagine are some sort of mutation that's going to create typically a prezygotic barrier. So it's going to prevent the non-random mating of different individuals inside the population. So this could be from the adaptation of a trait, such as more coloration in the feathers of birds, that makes certain females predisposed to mate with those individuals and not mate with the others. And it could separate the reproductive rituals in each of the two. The other factor of this prezygotic barrier could be, say, some sort of acquisition that causes a temporal change in the organism. So instead of an organism being, say, nocturnal during the night, some mutation may occur in one organism that causes them to have a more diurnal attitude. And they may pass on this diurnal trait to their offspring, and eventually the organisms no longer are active at the same time. So you're going to have a species that becomes more active during the day, where another would be more active during the night. And that can separate the two species to gather different traits and become different and be categorized instead as subspecies. So here, the main factor that's going to create these differences is some sort of gathering that prevents the random mating between the organisms. So such as these two examples that were given. For part B, they're giving us the explanation of invasions for separating that sort of isolation. So this is going to prevent, say, one organism or one human from being completely different from another human on, say, a different country or a different continent. And this is because they're going to have males invade and sort of mix their gene pool with the other humans on this other continent. So here we're being asked to look at the somatic and the gametic distribution of this gene expression. So males, of course, have an XY for their sex chromosomes, whereas females will be XX. So here, if we look at the gametic distribution of these traits, the males that invade are going to either contribute this X or this Y. What this is important for is that they're going to contribute the Y chromosome. This will result in the formation of a boy child. Whereas an X contribution by the male would give rise to the female or the girl. So when the invasion begins and they start to expand their gene pool by reproduction in that new continent, you're going to get two different types of offspring from that invasion. So you'll have the XY boy and you'll have the XX female. And of course, it's either that Y or the second X that came from the invading male. So here, on the sex chromosomes, 100% of the males that are born after this invasion are going to have the X from their mother. And this is important because the Y chromosome in individuals is not particularly important and is only responsible for presenting those male sexual characteristics. So all the other genetic information responsible for giving rise to phenotype and genotype will be here in the mother. This is different from the girls that will be born from those invading males because those will have a 50-50% distribution of X characteristics. So in their sex gametes, they will have half of the genes from the invading male, and they will have half their genes expressing from their native female mother. So here you're going to have a significant difference in gene expression between the males and the females in that gametic gene. However, for autosomal, these are mostly going to be distributed equally in a 50-50 manner. So these will be, say, in the dominant and recessive manner. So all individuals born from the invading males will have 50% of the genetic information from the father, and they will have 50% genetic information from the mother. So those show some of the differences between the gametic transfer of genetic information and the autosomal, where the boys born of the invading male will only have the genetic expression from the mother, whereas in other circumstances it should be about 50-50 to the invading males.